And again, welcome to the first of our three election debates here on Good Morning Cape Town. It's a national and provincial election that will impact on all 62 million South Africans, but let's zero in here at home. 7 million people call the Western Cape home. 3.3 million registered voters will decide on who will govern this province, who for the last 15 years has been governed by a national opposition party here in the Western Cape. The Democratic Alliance has had firm control over provincial politics since 2009. In 2019, the DA won 55% of the vote here, majority of 24 seats in the 42-seat provincial legislature. The ANC then returned as the official opposition, joined by Good, the Economic Freedom Fighters, the ACDP, the FF Plus, and Al Jama. And over the course of this decade, we've also, and over the course of this debate, we'll split political parties into two groups over the next 2 hours. The first hour, the first 5 largest political parties represented in the provincial legislature. The second hour will be joined by the Freedom Front Plus, Action SA, the NCC, Rise Mzansi, and also independent candidate on the regional ballot here in the Western Cape to contest a seat in the National Assembly, Zaki Ahmad. And this is a debate that represents a party's national manifesto, but also how it translates provincially, how it translates in this metro, how it translates locally, and how it translates into your household. But also, more importantly, I think, how politics impacts on the bread and butter issues, how households, working families must be served. So assisting me in today's discussion will be our civil society leaders, consumer watchdogs, community watch representatives, and of course you, a resident of the city of Cape Town, Western Cape. 021-446-0567. Drop me a WhatsApp, 072-567-1567. As I say, joined by Tertius Simmers of the DA, Khaled Sayed of the ANC, Nazir Paulson of the EFF, Ferlin Christians of the ACDP, and Suzette Little of the Good Party. We've taken a draw to see who would answer our first question today. Each participant will have 90 seconds. Time is a premium here, and also 60 seconds if there is a rebuttal. What seems to be, and hopefully will be, a lively debate. Ferlin Christians of the ACDP, he drew the lot to be answered the first question. Ferlin, a question to you. Is the Western Cape fundamentally a better off province now than in 2019? If so, why? If not, why not, Ferlin?
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity. I think the most important thing to say is what you compare the Western Cape with is with other provinces. And it's clearly that the Western Cape is better off at the moment than any other province. And I mean, facts and statistics will tell you that. There is, of course, alarming concerns in the Western Cape, but not enough is done in the Western Cape. And that's why the ACDP is telling the people our slogan for this year is SOS, service, order, and safety. So that is maybe a problematic matter at the moment that we're looking at. We're looking at our people are not safe. There is a survey that was done by insurance company Women First, where it says that females is the most unsafest in the Western Cape, in the entire country. So you have those alarming statistics, and but I need to tell you that I said to the DA the other day in the chamber, they will have to measure themselves with international standards, because the ANC in the country is messing up our country. We are worse off nationally, but in the province we are better off than the other provinces.
Is the ACDP a partner of the Democratic Alliance, or is it in opposition to the Democratic Alliance?
So we're part of the multi-party charter. So we've got an agreement that if the DA should need us to form the majority nationally and provincially, we will then join the DA or the other parties part of the charter. So we are in opposition in the Western Cape. So we represent a constituency, and we speak for that constituency. Where we need to criticize the government, we will do so, but where we need to complement the government, we will also do so. We believe that is constructive to build a better province.
Khalid Said, you're not in partnership with the DA. You're in fact the official opposition here in the Western Cape. Is the Western Cape a better place compared to 2019?
Most certainly not. The Western Cape is not a better place since 2019. I disagree with my learned colleague on the right here. The gap, the income gap, the living conditions that we face here continues to be a tale of two cities in the Western Cape. There's a Western Cape for the privileged, and there's a Western Cape for the affluent, and that has even worsened. Yes, and I want to say we must not necessarily compare ourselves to the rest of the country again, because the Western Cape, even when the ANC governed from 2004 to 2009, the DA inherited a functional Western Cape. The DA inherited a more inclusive Western Cape. The Western Cape has worsened in terms of living conditions for the underprivileged. It's worsened even in terms of the discourse. We've got a racist discourse that's dominant in this province. We've got a discourse where those who are not white are made to feel excluded in this particular province.
In an interview with the Mail and Guardian in 2020, the former Premier and former of the Western Cape and former chairperson of the ANC in the Western Cape, Ibrahim Rasool, said, Cape Town is a place where you've got to be an absolute fool to fail. He says if you consider that the old Cape province had 3 academic hospitals, all based in Cape Town, it had the bulk of the most talented white civil servants, the road infrastructure, Cape Town practically governs itself. If Ibrahim Rasool says you have to be an absolute fool to fail, why did the ANC fail in 2006 when voters decided it wanted to go with a democratic-led coalition then, and also in 2009 when voters in this province said it would rather have a democratic alliance government instead of an ANC government?
No, thank you very much for that. Look, firstly, I want to say that what the former Premier said is absolutely correct. I mean, if we are in Mitchell's Plain right now. The Mitchell's Plain Hospital, District Hospital, is a legacy of the ANC. What have the DA done in terms of, instead, they've closed down GF Jooste Hospital in Manenberg. But we, as the ANC, particularly our generation now, we are the first to admit that we have made mistakes. The infighting and the petty palace politics inside of the organization at the time was a major factor in ensuring that we lost power at both the level of the city as well as the province. And we're not going to run away from that. We are in the phase of renewal. We are rebuilding, particularly here in the province. We've got a provincial executive committee now that is serious about ousting the DA. We are much more united than before.
Tertia Simmers, if we were to take the empirical data of Auditor General's report, the latest Good Governance Africa report, saying that the better running municipalities and metros in this country is here in the Western Cape, predominantly run by a DA government. You won by 55% in 2019, but if we look at polls coming through over the last few weeks, just like the ANC nationally, there's even some suggestion that the Democratic Alliance could dip below 50% in this coming provincial poll. If the DA claims that it is performing so well, why is it not reflected in the attitude of voters here in the Western Cape? Tertius?
Well, thank you, Lester, for the question. No, indeed, we need to understand that polling measures the mood in a specific time frame during an election cycle. It's not forecasting what the election outcome will be on the 29th of May. There's exactly 56 days if you head actually towards the election as we speak. If you measure the real mood of the voters, you just need to measure your by-elections at the moment, which we've seen quite a number since 2021. In each by-election which the DA has contested in, we have not only retained wards, we've won wards from other parties around the table, but we've also grown where we did not win those wards. So in actual fact, there's a mood of positivity towards the Democratic Alliance as we speak. Why do I say that? Because, as you said, empirical data measures our success as a party of governance at local government level. And that success is reflective in the bread and butter issues, which is also indication of how successful we are at local government level across the Western Cape. And as you rightfully said, by all measurement tools, even the Aegis account, the best run municipalities, 15 of the 20 in the country, is based in the Western Cape. Once again, reaffirming our commitment as a party of governance good governance, clean governance, and accountable governance. And the voters reflect that when they do go out to the polls. Like I've said, by-elections are a true measurement of the tool of success.
The Western Cape Premier, when you put out a statement, I think it was last week, that the Western Cape could dip below 20% unemployment rate when the next Stats SA figures. Wouldn't be the first time that the Western Cape has been below 20% when the ANC was in government. Before 2009, we had an unemployment rate below 20% over the last while. We've seen a growth in jobs, many of those jobs being created by EPWP projects, by the Presidential Employment Stimulus projects. Is the Democratic Alliance taking credit for national interventions to see employment grow in the Western Cape?
Well, first and foremost, since 2009 to 2024, the population growth in the Western Cape has seen more people here than when the ANC actually governed this province. So it's actually disingenuous to compare the two time frames, given that an average 150,000 people migrate to the Western Cape. They are already voting with their feet, moving to a province which is effectively governed. So when the Premier says that, our target is to dip below the 20% unemployment rate, it speaks to us first having a bigger population than pre-2009. It speaks to our partnerships across multi-sectors with the private sector in our province. It's not just talking about EPWP. If you look at the last quarter's employment stats, the key drivers of employment in our province is agriculture, and also secondary sectors as well. A small component of that is actually coming from EPWP and other national government programs in our province. But again, the difference between where we were and where we are now is the fact that the bulk of the jobs are, as per our policy as the Democratic Alliance, being created by the private sector in our province. Again, earlier this week, we saw the member of the City of Cape Town announcing a multi-billion rand investment coming to the City of Cape Town by the private sector. It will create, a few thousand job opportunities. And also where we as the provincial government, which is a dear-led government, go out, our projects are also creating multi-job opportunities across our province.
So is that little Deputy Secretary General of the Good Party, the Democratic Alliance, is that we have a growing province, one of the fastest growing province, and the Mayor of the City of Cape Town says that in the very short term that we may even see a City of Cape Town be the largest city in South Africa. Has the Democratic Alliance delivered on the promise over the last 5 years? If not, what's Good going to do about it?
Lester, thank you so much. We must also look at the fact that Cape Town is strategically placed as a city. By God's grace, we have a city, we have a mountain, we have a place where certain levels of service delivery has already been there before the DA has taken over. We seem to see that the DA is claiming credit for certain things in the city that was there before. We see the DA claiming credit for things such as employment when it is EPWP, which was raised and developed during a period of 2011 to 2016. We've seen many of the projects and programs that is currently being run by the DA that are not original programs and projects, that they come from a period of between 2011 to 2018. We've seen over a period of time the growth within the Western Cape. It's a natural growth. People are coming here. It is a global phenomenon where people will all automatically migrate to the city, and that's what we are seeing because there are no other opportunities that is being created. I hear that the DA is talking about jobs created within the agricultural sector, but still 1% of that agricultural sector is in black hands. What has happened to those farms that is under their control? In municipalities, why have we not seen the restitution taking place if it is such a well-run city? Why haven't we seen a better growth in the city? We have so many parties being developed and being formed as a result of the lack of development. The mayor makes a statement. The one thing I will give to the DA as a credit to them, they have a fantastic media machine. And that media machine is what you see and what you feel by saying it is well run, that it has the best employment record. Yet you only have to go onto the Cape Flats. Look at the number of people that is currently sitting on your job seekers. Close on to 400,000 to 500,000 young people that is asking for opportunities. How is it well run if we are sitting here and saying it's not safe for women? You look around the table. I'm the only female politician. Almost 51% of our community are females, yet women are not represented in this province or in the city. We see that happening. How is it a well-run city? How are people represented? And how do we claim all of these wonderful things when the lived experience in the city and in the province is contrary to what we are told in the media?
Nazir Paulson of the EFF, your party runs itself on a campaign of speaking to the real experiences of South Africans. 20,000 homes are built in the Western Cape on average every single year. Has that not made any impact to what is a housing crisis in this province?
Thank you very much, Lister. Good morning, and good morning to the listeners. Lister, there's 500 informal settlements in the Western Cape. 20,000 homes doesn't even make an impact into the level of homelessness in the Western Cape. And those 500 informal settlements have very poor services. So when the DA says there's access to water, it means like 100 families or 100 homes using one tap, one toilet, and nobody wants to live like that. And Lester, to get to the issue, the original question, is the Western Cape better governed? And I agree with the former Premier of the Western Cape. The Western Cape, Cape Town, is the seat of colonialism. You have to be very foolish to fail at running the city. It runs itself. And if the DA had any intention of developing this city for the poor, there would have been industries. They say there's employment is being reduced, but they don't say where that employment sits. It sits with the EPWP. We need proper industries that will provide decent work, and decent work means decent income, proper working conditions, not these EPWP where people stand on the road. And the EPWP was never supposed to be an employment opportunity. It was supposed to be when people are desperately in need of job or something to tie the time. But so anyway, and to get back to the land situation, and our cry for this elections is our land and jobs now, and stop load shedding. And if you look at patterns of land ownership in the Western Cape, the 49% coloured Indian population owns 17% of the land. 16% white community, 82% of the land, and 35% African, 1% of the land. We never contested an election, or we never wanted freedom in 1990 merely for casting a vote. We wanted to change the patterns of ownership of land. And here in the Western Cape, if you have to look at the ownership, the land ownership patterns, it's worse than anywhere else in the country. So we have to compare real issues. And you spoke about bread and butter issues. There's a serious food insecurity in the Western Cape amongst African and coloured people. If you go over down the road, let's say if you go and feed tonight in Tafelsig or Eastridge, you will see the levels of hunger. So if you ask me, and so we're really at the cold face of the real conditions, the lived conditions of the people.
I have to rein you in there. I've said 90 seconds per answer. Tertius, as MEC for housing, you've been on record saying that we have a housing backlog, a waiting list of 600,000 applicants in the Western Cape. Are you saying that there are people within their lifetimes as residents of the Western Cape that they will not see a dream realized of having their own home if a housing backlog sits at 600,000 people?
Well, Lester, firstly, there's a housing opportunity in the house itself, and correctly, every year the housing backlog grows as more people migrate to our province and express their need to be assisted in some form of a housing opportunity. The reality is that as they move here, as a provincial government, we've been implementing innovative approaches to addressing the housing backlog, given that not everybody wants a free subsidized house. Some people want affordable housing, which is a rental option or a form of ownership, which is what we are focusing on as the Western Cape, which is where we also differ from other provinces. But just some corrections, Lester. As a party who aspire to govern, I just need to correct the EFF. There's not 500 informal settlements in the Western Cape. There's over 2,000 informal settlements. And since COVID-19, we've seen 1,024 new informal settlements. So I think the EFF need to get their facts straight if they envision themselves as a party of governance. Also, Lester, in terms of EPWP, to Suzette, the Western Cape over the last year and year have created 75% of all new jobs in the West, in the country. That's national stats. And 360,000 jobs is definitely not EPWP jobs, so I do encourage you to get your facts straight. Then in terms of agri-transformation, which is the land issue, again, the Good Party are actually misrepresenting the facts here. In the Western Cape, 10% of the land has been transferred successfully, not 1%. Please do not disinform our listeners. Thank you.
Khalid, there has been statistics that land redistribution has been going at a steadier pace here in the Western Cape than we've seen in other provinces in the Western Cape. And if transformation of land to particularly black ownership is happening slower in other provinces compared to the Western Cape, why are voters to trust this party or this party nationally as well to materialize land transfer?
Look, Lester, on this issue around land transformation, as Nazir pointed out, as well as the former Premier of the Western Cape pointed out, the Western Cape and Cape Town in particular runs itself. We've already had a system in place which the ANC itself put in place around land reform and transformation. That's number one. Number two, we have to ask ourselves the question, if we say that land reform and transfer of ownership has been so great here compared to other provinces, why do we not practically see it in the lived realities of our people? Why is it, for example, that in this particular province we've still got such a massive housing backlog? Why is it that when you've got low-cost housing that needs to be built in the Tafelberg site, for example, you have a provincial government that goes and spends millions to fight against that particular development? So it may be, there may be statistical data which is at the surface level, but if we zone in, if we look at the lived realities of our people, that's not really the case. Lester.
Verlin, we're talking about bread and butter issues. How do you see provincial governments affecting the realities of people, noting that the provincial government relies on national grants in the form of social development, health and education? It does generate some revenue through licenses, gambling, etc. But how do you see provinces so distant from national and local government, where we see real active delivery? How are provinces meant to address bread and butter issues?
Look, there's a lot to do in the province, and me sitting on the education portfolio, I just want to talk about education. Our schooling is still not where it should be, and the departments strive to have quality education in every classroom, and I don't see that. So we must start from a young age, making sure that we don't lose our learners to the gangs and drugs. I think that is, for me, is important, fundamental, because we get gangsters, recruiting our youngsters from school because it's lucrative. So I think we can do more when it comes to schooling. And also, of course, there's a lot of problems when it comes to clinics and that. But we must also understand that there was severe budget cuts from national when it was the wage deal happened nationally, and the province in education had to give up something like 500 million in education. So we must also look at that. But there's a lot to do, and I think there's when I spoke to people in Mitchell's Plain, because I'm on a regular basis in Mitchell's Plain, a lot of people say, I don't want to vote because my vote means nothing. So that's why, as the ACDP, we are out on the ground speaking to people, bringing them up. I think we must give some solutions. We cannot just criticize. How are we going to improve your lives? How are we going to put food on the table? How are we going to make sure that our learners are safe at school? When our females walk, I spoke about the neighborhood watches. I'm very passionate about the neighborhood watches. Getting up 5 o'clock in the morning, making sure that our females are safe to the taxi rank. So I said as the ACDP, why don't we give a funeral cover to our neighborhood watches? Because these guys do it for free and they're not getting a cent.
We'll talk about safety, crime, gangsterism, and access to free and safe public areas in a short while. Welcome back to Good Morning Cape Town. We're talking and we're in debate about the bread and butter issues of elections 2024. The ANC DA EFF, ACDP and Good Party representatives are here with me. Suzette Little, Deputy Secretary General of the Good Party. What is the Goods Party's thoughts on the Provincial Powers Bill? The Democratic Alliance says it wants to devolve several national competencies to a provincial or a local government level. In the theme of bread and butter issues, surely if we can get a train service up and running at an affordable cost, this is going to benefit working families in the Western Cape?
True, Lester, that is something that you will recall Brett Herron was working on just before we had left the DA. And that was a survey that was undertaken simply because we had a system that was failing. But we have to be realistic about the devolution of these powers to a provincial government that has shown itself incompetent to deal with what it currently has. And that is the reality that we are faced with. We are faced with the situation that if you've got a situation, let's take, for example, safety and security. You have a competency that you have control of. It is the competency of the city of Cape Town in this particular province that has the largest rental stock area in the country, which is the sole responsibility of the city of Cape Town. What we have seen is that money has been poured into a system called the LEAP offices, which is a creation of J.P. Smith, because they refuse to develop the Metro Police, which is what they should really do, and simply because they fear that the ANC government is going to take their Metro Police, so they haven't developed that. Now we have a situation that they are incompetent to actually govern and to control their rental stock areas, which at this point in time is a very crime-ridden area. Name any place where there's crime, gang activities, drugs, you'll find that it is the responsibility of this province. Now we have a province where an MEC of local government turns his back on holding a city accountable. How then are you trying to run a national competency when you cannot hold a local government such as the city of Cape Town to account for their own rental stock, which they are turning a blind eye to and not making sure that services are delivered there? So how is it possible that they now claim to have the capacity to run national competencies when they fail hopelessly at providing one simple thing, safety in their rental areas?
Nazir Paulson, your president of the EFF, Julius Malema, said on this show last week, you're not putting up a provincial candidate here in the Western Cape because he said provinces are wastes of money. So, on that principle, the EFF must be for the devolution of certain national competencies to local government, to lower forms of government?
Lester, I think you misunderstood. We are speaking about building a state with capacity, a state that can actually run this country. So you won't need a local government that needs to be responsible for taking care of transport, logistics, police. We'll have a government with a competent minister who's capable of running police. But be that as it may, Tertius, for example, under an EFF government, there won't be this informal settlements any longer, 500, 1,600, 2,000, Minister Simmers, because the EFF government will have a state construction company responsible for delivering houses, infrastructure, hospitals, schools. And I think if in that way, it will no longer be outsourced to external service providers, just the way this DA would outsource the running of Metro Rail to
Nazir?
external service providers and not run it themselves.
I have to leave it here. We'll come back to our debate. We're talking to the issues affecting the 3.3 million voters, but also the 7 million residents of the Western Cape. We have various political parties here, but let's go to our audience. Michael Jacobs is Deputy Chair of the Mitchells Plain United Residents Association. Michael, what is your question to our representatives here?
Good morning, Lester. Now, let me be blunt and be very clear. I'm from Mitchells Plain. I'm going to complain for the right reasons to these political party representatives. And we need to use a language that shouldn't only be accommodating to their political needs or electioneering. Mitchell's Plain currently has about a backlog of housing about 15,000. We've got backyarders. We've got people that lives in people's homes. They're newly married. They must stay with the family. No home. Now, politicians say we've got a housing crisis. We are way past that. We're sitting with a housing disaster in this province. So I clearly want to say that when province can send back money to national treasury because they couldn't utilize the budget or the allocation that was sent to build houses. And on top of that, the city in June 2023 stopped the Beacon Valley housing project, claiming intimidation, claiming that people has been shot at.
Michael, I'm going to leave you. I think we got the gist of your question. Clean audits are one thing. Accounting for money is one thing. But if money is not being spent on service delivery, like housing budgets, Tertius as also incumbent MEC for Human Settlements, you can't say that the Democratic Alliance in this province is actually serving if money is going back to National Treasury, which should go to building houses.
Well, first and foremost, I think there's two important aspects to Michael's inputs. In terms of budgets being sent back, when you get 70 million rand 2 months before the end of your financial year, human settlement cycling and for programs and implementation, there's a process that you need to actually spend that money adequately and effectively to account to the AG, which is why the City of Cape Town actually gave the money back. In terms of province, once again, I just need to correct Michael. We have never given back any money in terms of the HSDG grant as I sit here. The only aspect of money which we have had to return because of land invasion and where acts of criminality has prevented these projects from actually taking flight is in terms of the informal settlement upgrading grant. Those are two differences. And we are held accountable not just by the legislature but also by the voters and the residents. So if you can't spend the money, then you should not hang on to it.
Derek Marco is a community activist, has also been a long-time elections monitor. Your questions for our representative?
What confidence do you give the voters so that they can vote for any of your parties?
30 seconds, Khalid. I'll start here with you on my right.
Thank you very much. I think it's a poor excuse to speak about land invasions and extortions as a reason as to why you've got to send back money. The over 200 million that has been sent back by the DA-led government is inexcusable. It speaks to poor planning. It speaks to not engaging with communities. It in fact means that the DA are not rooted with communities. Our solution is to say, as the ANC, not only in terms of dealing with a housing crisis. Yes, we want to reduce the settlements. We want to ensure that there's basically, that there's housing for all, integrated housing. But at the root of everything, including healthcare, including education, it's to and community safety, it's to ensure that communities are part and parcel of driving solutions. We need to have a bottom-up
Ferdinand Christians, ACDP.
stance that we have to take. Thank you.
Yeah, the important thing is the ACDP brings hope to this nation with God-fearing Christian leaders. We believe that leaders are failing people, so we are bringing in servant leaders. We are here to serve. But let me just say on property rights, and this is important. The HDP stands for protection of property rights, not taking it away, and we believe in redistribution of land with compensation. The EFF and the ANC are chasing people away and getting people not to vote because of their they are the culprits when it comes to land invasions. They speak when it comes to land invasions. So they must stop that rhetoric and let the people, give people hope and positive hope for the future.
Nazir Paulson, is the EFF responsible for land invasions?
Lester, the people who invade land are people who are desperately in need of land.
So it just says the
So they must go. If you see a nice piece of land, don't be homeless. Go and take it. I'm going to say
Nazir, there has been a court judgment saying that the EFF and particularly your leader would be illegal for you to call for people to illegally
So what must they do,
occupy
Lester? What must they do?
land?
People who are landless, what must they do? Live 10, 20, 30 people in one house. That's inhumane. That's inhumane. No God-fearing person could say, rather go and live 30, 40 people in a house than to go and live on a space of land that is vacant.
So is that little good party?
Lester, we believe that public land for public good. Government departments, province, national, are only custodians of the land that belongs to the people. And we must ensure that housing is developed in suitable places close to where they need to work and play. We've seen this happen in the city of Cape Town. It cost us dearly because when we identified suitable land within the CBD, we saw the results of that. And so as good, we believe that the land must be used for public good, not sold off as it is currently being done. We talk about the shortage of housing, but go and have a look. Every single time there is a council meeting, the land is being sold off without the comments of the people that actually need it.
I have to call time on this discussion, but I appreciate Suzette Little, Nazir Paulson, Tertia Simmers, Ferland Christians, Khalid Sahid. More political parties up next.